So we're doing a V6 to V8 swap in this '04 Silverado. If you're unfamiliar, this is my dad's new truck we picked up. Came with a blown up V6 and a 5-speed manual. We're going to put a V8 into it. So we're just about ready to throw the motor and transmission back into it, but I wanted to share a few things. So first of all, we're not professionals. We're basically learning all this along the way. We've never swapped a motor or anything like that before. So it's a 2004 truck, and we got a 2004 4.8 out of a Tahoe. We got the engine and wiring harness all together. So this is a pretty clean motor even before we power washed it. And it's a 2004 4.8 like I said, and it has about 140,000 miles. So we did a little bit of maintenance and replaced a few gaskets and stuff. If anybody's interested, I'll put up a screen now of all the stuff that we did, all the gaskets and everything. So basically it's a 2004, and we decided to make it how a factory V8 2004 truck would come. So we'll talk about a couple other things later, like fuel lines, fuel tanks, stuff like that. But I first want to cover a little bit of the wiring stuff that we're doing. Since the motor and wiring harness came out of an automatic 4-wheel drive Tahoe, and we're putting it in a tool drive manual truck, we got to do a couple changes to the wiring harness here. So the engine harness also hooks to the transmission, and this is a 5-speed NV3500, and it has two wiring plugs here, one here and one here. So this is the section of the harness that comes back to the transmission, and this plug is actually the same between the two harnesses, and that plugs into here, which I'm assuming is a speed sensor of some sort. And this plug came off of our V6 harness, and that plugs in here. So this plug, I'm assuming, is for reverse lights, and it uses the same two wires that are also in the automatic plug. So it's a gray and a pink wire, and I'll show some more footage of that here. So we ended up cutting actually two plugs off this harness that were not needed for this transmission, and cut the wires that we didn't need and just taped them back into this loom here. So it just takes the two wires, the pink and the gray wire here for this plug, and this plug is already in the harness and just plugs right in. Alright, so all we got to do now is connect the transmission up to the motor. As you can see there, we got a brand new flywheel, clutch, pressure plate, and all that. And we also put a new pilot bearing that came with the clutch kit in there too. So we were able to get the engine in with the transmission already bolted on. We ended up taking the shifter off to have some clearance with the firewall. It's all bolted in now, motor mounts worked, and then the cross member for the transmission is all bolted into. So I want to explain what we decided to do with the fuel system. So this being a 2004 truck with a V6, originally it came with the return style fuel system. And on an '04 factory V8 truck, it would have had a returnless style system. On these V8 trucks, all they had is one feed line here and then a vapor line that goes here and connects here. So on the V6 truck with the return style fuel system, those have three lines that run from the tank to the front: feed, return, and a vapor line. And the V8 trucks, like I said, just have a feed and a vapor line. So the gas tanks are different from the V6 with the return style to the returnless style. So the one with the return style has the hole for the fuel pump is about 3.5 inches, and then the returnless style has about a 5.5 inch hole like you see here. So we got a used tank from a truck, an 04 truck with a 6.5 foot bed just like this. And then we got a new fuel pump that would have came on a factory V8 truck. So this plug plugged right in, and then this we had to get a little jumper harness and splice that into that plug with how they told you to match up the wires. So this is the evap canister. I'm sure you can do this without running this system, but we decided to hook it back up, and on this truck it was actually mounted there in front of the tank, and we decided to move it here where we've seen a lot of them more often. So off this new fuel pump, here is this vent or vapor line that goes to here, and it also connects into this line here, but that has to hook to this side of the canister, and then this side connects to the feed line, the main feed line, and then this is just another vent that goes to here, and that also vents to the filler neck. So this small line coming off this canister, that hooks to the vent line or the vapor line, and that goes to these plastic lines here. One is the feed and one's the vapor. Those are connected on the fuel tank, and then they connect to hard lines under the truck. We also had to get this vent valve solenoid here, and that connects to this little vent. That's just the opening there, and that connects to this big fat line here on this one. So that connects to here.
All right, here is where the plastic fuel lines on the front of the tank connect to the hard lines. And this truck being a pretty rusty truck, we decided to get all new brake lines and fuel lines. So these are new stainless fuel lines from a company called Lines to Go, and I would not recommend them. It took us hours and hours to get these to fit right. All right, here is the ABS pump, and then you see the fuel lines here. They run up to a flexible section here that connects them to the front section. And we got these to fit pretty good after about an hour or more of tweaking and bending. And then we get to the part where they go to the front, and those also do not fit very well. So, like I said, do not recommend those lines.
All right, so that's basically what we decided to do, is make this truck like a factory 2004 V8 truck would come, with the returnless style system, the feed line there, and then the vapor line that goes. If you're wondering why the fenders are off, this was originally a GMC truck, and we're turning it into a cat eye. So you can see there we got one fender back on, got the inside painted somewhat close to match, and then we'll eventually have to paint the outside there. All right, so we're getting the passenger side pretty much buttoned up here. We're working on the cooling system, the AC, and then I just mocked up this intake a little bit too. So the intake air box, the V6 one is the same, so you can use that over if you want to. And as far as the cooling system, the radiator, you're either going to have to get a radiator for the V8, or you can use the V6 one, and then you have to adapt this little coolant line in somewhere. But I just had this radiator off my truck, so we're going to use that. There's a coolant line that comes off the throttle body, goes here, and then it hooks into the radiator down there. So you're going to need the upper and lower radiator hoses for the V8, and also the heater hoses that go into the water pump there. As far as the air conditioning, we're waiting on a condenser yet, but here is the lines to the condenser. This bottom line is the same, so you can reuse that for the V6 to V8. The top one, you're going to need a new line. This goes from the top of the condenser to the AC compressor there on the motor. And then you need a new dryer here, new line here. You can see those connect down there to the AC compressor. So new line here and a new dryer because of the angle that that line comes out at. And like I said, you can reuse this line. Also, if you're going to go with the clutch fan like this, you're going to need this fan shroud that's for the V8. The V6 one does not work. So I made a separate video on the throttle pedal situation because I didn't see any good videos online about it, but I'll briefly explain it here. So this being a 2004, all the V6 trucks came with a drive-by cable system, and we're swapping it to drive-by wire since we got a 2004 motor and harness and everything. So there is the throttle control module, that's the direct bolt-on, and then down there between that main harness and the brake booster, there's a small dimple that you have to drill out. We used the 1 5/8" hole saw, and that worked good. So for installing the pedal, there's two ways to do it. I guess you could call it the correct way is replace the entire brake pedal bracket. Got to take a lot of stuff apart to do that. We were able to install it without doing that, and like I said, you can watch the other video for more detailed explanation, but basically we got the old pedal out of the way and then bolted the new pedal back in place. All the way to the right side, flush with that edge, and then down to the bottom there, and we used riv nuts and bolted it in. The wiring runs in that factory location there, just like factory. So we're plugging in the engine harness now to the fuse box. You got to get these two black ones together. See the two white ones go together. This just plugs into the main block there. And this is the plug that has to go all the way to the throttle module. We got this side pretty much all hooked up. Got the fuse block all in. It's all connected, got the battery in. Don't have it connected yet. Also forgot to mention that the power steering pump, we used the one off the V6 since this truck is a two-wheel drive. The motor came out of a four-wheel drive. And we got all new lines and a new cooler. So the pumps I think are probably the same, but how the lines connect and the length of the lines is probably different. So we got all new. So as far as tuning to make it run, we decided we're going to use the V6 PCM and try that first. I have HP tuners, and basically I have the stock tune off my 2004 V8 truck. It's a 4.85 speed, just like this is going to be. So it should be exactly the same what we need. Going to try that first, should be easiest. Just write that complete engine tune onto this PCM first. My thought with that is that the PCM stores the VIN number, and keeping the same VIN, I shouldn't have to delete any of the security system stuff. So I'm going to try that first. So I'm reading the stock file now off the V6 PCM, and I had read something about an aftermarket radio interrupting this kind of stuff, and it wouldn't read with that in there, so we unplugged the radio. It's reading now, getting the stock file for the V6. So we ended up having the fuel pump wiring a little twisted around. Looking at the pump plug like this, the left one is the ground, and we hooked that to the small black wire on the chassis harness for the V6. Second one from the left is the 5-volt reference. We hooked that to the purple wire on the chassis harness. Third one from the left is the fuel level sensor. We hooked that one to the big black on the chassis harness. And the one on the right is the 12-volt supply for the fuel pump. And we hooked that one to the gray wire on the chassis harness, and it seems to work that way. After all that, we had one engine light there. It said we need to do a crank relearn. So I could do that on HP tuners. Just had to have it warmed up. Not sure if that matters, but have it warmed up, and then it said to rev it up to fuel cutoff. So I hit OK and did that, and then it worked, and then the engine light went away. So that was all there was to that. fuel pump wiring seem to work now. Just got the open Y pipe right now. Got to do an exhaust eventually, but I'll get a little rev here. Alright, I think I'm going to end this video here. Got the truck running, 4.8 in there. Be a couple more videos at least, putting the bed back on and the body panels and everything. Doing some interior work on it and stuff like that, but that's it for this video. Got the V8 swap done.